Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a slightly more disappointing edition of our post-match live Facebook chat-a-thing. My name is David from We Ain't Got No History, and we're here to talk about Chelsea 0, Arsenal 0. Not exactly how we planned our Sunday to begin. Certainly not exactly how we planned this game to go. It's a good first 15 minutes, and then a not so good 30 minutes, and then a pretty good second half that just somehow, just lacking the final quality. Some questionable refereeing, which pretty standard these days. Can't really complain about either one of the two decisions against David Luiz. The bicycle kick is in the crowd is generally whistled as a foul. Depending on contact made, you can give a yellow, of course. And then the red card at the end, which is now it's 3 straight competitive games against Arsenal, or even semi-competitive, where we've had a player sent off. This time it's David Luiz. Not much to complain about that red card either. Probably you can make an argument that the referee should have had control of the game a long time ago. Kolasinac certainly should have been booked far earlier than the 91st minute or whenever he finally got a yellow card out of it. But it's David Luiz lost the plot there a little bit, much like we've done against Arsenal before. But he was certainly not the only player to disappoint today. Just about everybody except maybe Bakayoko, who came on at the half, and Hazard, who came on for the final 20 minutes, were the less disappointing aspects of Chelsea today. Of course, if we had our way, both of those players, or certainly if I had my way, both of those players would have been playing from the beginning. So it's also as the disappointment of being proven right, essentially, that those two players should have started. Instead, we had Cahill back in defense, which whatever is fine. Turns out no major issues outside of, well, possibly got a bit lucky there because Bellerin certainly had the run of Chelsea's left side there for a good while in the first half when we kind of gained control of the game for the second half, so that was less of a threat. But certainly in the first half, Alonso and Cahill didn't quite manage that side too well. Anyway, so let's talk about the starting lineup. I suppose it was the usual 3-4-3 with Courtois in goal, the familiar back three from last season of Cahill, David Luiz, and Azpilicueta. The midfield 4 of Alonso, Moses on the wings, and Fabregas and Conte in the middle, and then a front 3 of Pedro, Morata, and Willian. Certainly questionable from the outset. Questionable decisions there. One, to give Cahill his spot back after his suspension, which I think many, if not most, would have given that spot, kept that spot with Rudiger instead of giving it back to Cahill. And while we survived with a clean sheet defensively, we certainly saw some issues that we remember certainly probably pretty well from last season, of issues through build-up on the left side with Cahill and Alonso. Not quite the same as, not as good as the right side with Azpilicueta. And that's something where Rudiger has proven to be a better option, even if you just, ignore the defensive portion of the equation. Rudiger has seemed more comfortable on the ball than Cahill, and with Arsenal happy to concede possession to us, which seems to be the new Arsenal thing these days, we knew certainly starting Fabregas spoke to that expectation. So having Cahill there instead of Rudiger is was disappointing, but certainly not the most questionable. I guess overall turned out all right. I certainly would not have started Fabregas in this game, even though he had a good influence on it in the second half. But that was after we made it a more of a 3-5-2 formation. I think Bakayoko's second half performance, his 45 minutes, the dynamism and the running with the ball in the middle that he added there is certainly something we could have used in the first half, where we seemed to lose control of the game for large stretches, despite starting pretty well for the first 15 minutes or so. And then I guess it's justifiable if Hazard is not completely fit still, or we're just taking it super careful with him. The front three of Pedro, Morata, and Willian is certainly my choice if Hazard is not fit, but not exactly good showings from any of those three. Pedro missed Chelsea's best chance of the game, and my guess is he probably scores that if he doesn't get hurt a couple minutes beforehand. So he was still trying to run off his knee injury, and he didn't look comfortable. He didn't have his as quick of a first step as he normally does. The ball seemed to get a little stuck under his feet, and so by the time he tried to, I think he tried to chip the goalkeeper, and didn't quite get it high enough, so it bounced off Cech's shoulder. That was easily Chelsea's best chance of the game, and if he scores that, obviously, the game turns out differently, but he didn't, so it was a bit of a struggle beyond that one chance. And certainly, if Pedro scores that, it also justifies Fabregas' selection from the start, since it was his trademark ball over the top that released Pedro. But didn't happen enough. Didn't happen quite well enough, I guess. And Pedro kind of faded after that too, and he was withdrawn at the half. Willian lasted all of 70 minutes. So again, maybe it's easy to second guess, but Hazard from the start would have been interesting and nice to see. But it is what it is. And then Morata at the top of the formation, leading the line, seemed to be falling down a little too easily today. A little back to his back to what we saw from him in the first couple games, where he just feels the first amount of contact or plays for the contact and then tries to go down. And certainly Oliver was referee Michael Oliver. He was not giving too many easy fouls early on, and then he changed that tone and started handing out yellows left and right. So not exactly the best way to referee again, but it is what it is. Not the best day for Morata, although he did have a couple of chances. Those we seem to be playing for that Azpilicueta to Morata cross. I think Fabregas tried that once as well. So it's we're looking for it. It didn't seem to quite happen today, and certainly Monreal got away with several interesting calls, including the one where he held David Luiz down with both hands in the box. That one uncalled. Mustafi had a couple shaky moments that could have been called differently. Eden Hazard is completely fit now. It says P needs to start every game. Well, probably not every game, but he needs to start. I'm certainly surprised that he didn't start today. There's no real other word to describe. I would have assumed Hazard is fit enough to start by now. I mean, he was starting for Belgium, 2 weeks ago, albeit it was only against Gibraltar, so he probably only needs 50% fitness to play against Gibraltar. But he's been making steady appearances since, and you would have thought this was the game where he would have made his return to the lineup. especially since he probably won't be playing against Nottingham Forest on Wednesday, and he only made a substitute appearance on last Tuesday, so seemed to set up quite well for him. And obviously, with the result, now knowing the result in hindsight, this certainly we could have used him from the start. And same for Bakayoko, who many wanted to start. Many assumed he would start, but he didn't. But I mean, on the plus side, he in his second half appearance, he showed that our faith in him should be well justified. So. There are still issues. I mean, Bakayoko adds all sorts of strength and dynamism into the midfield. He's still coming to grips with the specific aspects of Chelsea's build-up and stuff like that. So maybe that's one reason why Conte decided to not play it from the start. But it is what it is. That's why he's the manager. He makes decisions, and then when they pay off, we give him credit. And when he takes a risk or makes a decision that we don't quite agree with, then we get to criticize him. It's the beauty of being a fan and him being the manager, I guess. Somebody was talking about earlier in the comments about David Luiz's yellow cards. His challenge was a straight red, even though he already had a yellow card. So that kind of is ignored in that sense, and it doesn't count as a second yellow. It counts as a straight red. So he will miss 3 games unless we appeal, which we probably won't because Gary Cahill got sent off for less, and we don't really have much of a leg to stand on there. If we are to complain about something in that regard, it is that basically we've made that challenge twice now. Cahill getting sent off on opening day and David Luiz today, and then we've had similar tackles against us twice now. Once by Dyer, and then once by Gueye in Everton, and both of those guys only got yellows. So that's a little frustrating. The idea is you're supposed to be consistently refereed, and that's not a concept that exists really. But so Luiz will miss 3 games, which means he misses Nottingham Forest on Wednesday, he misses the Stoke City game this coming weekend, and then he misses Manchester City game in the weekend after. He will be available for the Atletico Madrid game next in the middle of next week. So that's good, but otherwise, time for young Andreas Christensen to truly step up and prove his talent and his worth. I would completely assume that he's going to be starting, especially considering that Conte said very specifically after Tuesday's game that he trusts him and Batshuayi as well, whom we didn't see today. But It is what it is. I suppose the lineup might be Cahill, Christensen, Azpilicueta, or we'll see how Rudiger and the Cahill situation shakes out, since Conte seems to prefer Cahill still, which is questionable, I'm sure, to many, but it is what it is. For those asking, I am not in the UK, as you might be able to tell by the accent. I'm in sunny California. Just seeing if Conte was saying anything interesting about the game in the post-game, but it doesn't really look like it. He just said his usual stuff about playing well and commitment and all that good stuff. And the need to improve. Always need to improve. Kevin says Conte won't criticize any players in public, so saying that he has confidence in any player is meaningless. Yeah, there's something to that. Obviously, Conte, unlike Mourinho, who says he doesn't criticize players in public and then criticizes players in public all the time, Conte actually does seem to adhere to this old school value quite strongly. but there are levels, I think, to what he will say about players, and specifically saying he has confidence in those guys, I think is a good sign. I don't know. He didn't really have to say he has confidence in him, right? He just said, "Oh, here we did well, but everybody needs to improve." Like, what's his standard line, right? Like, "Oh, he's done well, but we can improve still," is what he says basically about every player's performance. But on those two guys after Tuesday, said he has confidence in them and all that. So I would definitely expect Christensen to get most of, if not all of, David Luiz's minutes in the next 3 games. I think he's earned that. Of course, as we saw today, sometimes what we think is obvious or a decision that should be clearly taken is not always the decision that Conte will take. But he certainly. I think there's a general consensus of laying the blame at his feet, and that's rightly so. That comes with the job of being the head coach and picking the lineup. And when you pick the lineup that doesn't give you results, then you're going to be blamed for it, probably more than the players. It's just how it is. Let's talk about Moses. Says Abdul. Yeah, Moses. I don't think either Moses or Alonso had a particularly strong game today. But again, outside of Bakayoko and Hazard, nobody really had a strong game today. Even Conte was giving the ball away at a fair clip, although he won it back a few times. So even with him, though bad is it's attenuated usually, but. I think Moses was, much like Pedro, was affected a fair amount with his early injury, where he had a knee-on-knee clash with Lacazette, who, by the way, was fairly useless again, which I don't know, it's always at least we made the right choice there, and not so far anyway, not signing him. But yeah, Moses certainly not his best game, but I don't think picking him out as a specific weakness today is fair, because certainly there were people whose performances had a bigger impact on Chelsea not winning today. Alonso got outran by Bellerin, says Kelvin, who's one of the fastest players in the world. I think that's excusable. Yeah, I saw a lot of that criticism actually against Alonso, especially in the first half, saying he can't come to grips with Bellerin. And there's only so much you can do when the dude has Olympic speed. If they play him incorrectly, the only thing you can do is foul him a lot, which Alonso tried a couple times. Actually, he didn't even get a yellow. But, that's more of he has to be helped out by the people around him. So Cahill and Conte, both of whom did not really cover themselves in glory in those plays. Yeah, you can kick him, sure, but you can only do that so many times before they give you a yellow. I mean, it's a risky strategy. It's something that we see at a regular clip against Hazard, right? So sometimes the referee sends you off, like he did under Herrera against Hazard at one time, and sometimes they don't. So it's and it was actually the same referee today that sent Herrera off against one good kick and it's over. Yeah, if you use it properly, it's that's pretty old school values there. They used to teach you, to introduce yourself to your opposing number with a hefty kick to the shins or the ankles, and or up the backside as John Terry once tried to Alexis. But as John Terry learned, that's not something you can really do these days. Could Hazard have done much better on a shot that went in the Czech's hand? Asks Alex. And I think the obvious answer is yes. I was really hoping that shot was going in, and unfortunately that shot was kind of central, and and Czech even trolled us all by catching it instead of just pushing it over for a corner. So yeah, it was a slightly disappointing finish, that one from Hazard. Although it was good to see him in good flow, putting players on the ground and working, creating his shot, which he doesn't always doesn't always play that direct. But he'll finish. I think he'll finish those chances more often than not. Much like Pedro will finish his one-on-ones more often than not. Of course, it wasn't all just Chelsea missing chances. I mean, Arsenal had that one. Was it Ramsey whose topo came off the post after we failed to put in a tackle on him and just backed off as if everybody was Cahill, which it actually wasn't. It was Azpilicueta who was backing off of him for who knows why. But and then that rebound fell to Lacazette, who just shanked it high and wide. In fairness to him, it was a bouncy ball, but how much they paid, like what, 50 million for him? I'd expect my 50 million pound striker to score it into an empty net on a bouncing ball. Fortunately, Lacazette didn't. So yeah, got a little lucky there. Certainly, Arsenal had their chances in the first half. That was after the first 15 or so minutes. It was Arsenal who seemed to be on top. In the halftime, at one point, we were just kind of begging for the halftime whistle. It seemed like Arsenal were just minutes away from scoring. But Chelsea, second half, Chelsea seemed to control the proceedings a lot better. The 3-5-2 with Conte and Bakayoko in the middle, and then Fabregas initially playing ahead of them, but then as the game went on, just kept dropping deeper and deeper, and eventually just ended up playing like the deep lying playmaker, collecting the ball from the defense, who also seemed to have a decent amount of trouble, especially in the second half, just creating or building from the back. We seemed to just pass it around at the back for ages at a time and nobody moving. So all that was a little disappointing. That's not something that we often see from Chelsea these days. If we have a pretty specific plan that we like to use for building up, which didn't seem to work, unfortunately, which obviously Arsenal also caught on to after all this time. But certainly on the left side with Cahill and Alonso, we were having a fair amount of trouble building up. I don't know who where the blame for that lies. I'd like to blame Cahill because that's my decision to not start him, or that would have been my decision to not start him if I was there. But just to me, Rudiger is a lot more comfortable on the ball. Do you think it was the right decision to start Fab ahead of Bakayoko and Willian Pedro ahead of Eden? Yeah, that is the big question, isn't it? I mean, that's basically the one big topic from this is Conte's decisions, and it's multiple decisions, not just one. And the short answer is no, it was not the right decision. Obviously, it's influenced a little bit by the result, which this is the first, I think somebody was saying this is the first 0-0 home draw for Conte in charge of Chelsea. If nothing else, we seem to at least score a goal in most games. Not today, it didn't seem to come close after the Pedro chance. A bit more control in the second half, so we were, maybe if we play long enough, we create a goal, or give Hazard more time, we create a goal. But yeah, certainly once Bakayoko came on for the second half, we were fully in control. And most, as the old adage, most games are won in midfield. And once we started dominating the midfield with 3 against 2, here you go. We were fully in control. Arsenal didn't have was it a single shot on goal in the second half. They did have the ball in the back of the net, but that guy was way offside, so it shouldn't really count as an actual chance or a shot, which it doesn't count as a shot because it's waved off. but it was a pretty weak free kick too. That's when Oliver started losing control of the game a little bit. But Willian needs to lay off the showboating a little, I reckon. I don't know. Was he showboating today? Did he do enough to call it showboating? It seemed I don't know. It seemed to be a bit of a non-performance from Willian. A lot of effort as usual. And really, the only play I remember from Willian is that one time he closed check down to block the goal kick or block the long kick out, and then that was just before he was withdrawn. Yeah. Too much pride for Conte, says Joe. Is it pride? I mean, I'm not sure. Why is leaving Hazard on the bench a pride issue for the coach? You know, if there's one thing we know about Conte is, you know, he wants to win. So it's not like he's not gonna hamstring himself by leaving what he might think is his best option to leaving his best option on the bench. Calvin says Willian stole Conte's ball twice in this game. I do remember that one time. Yeah, they seem to get in each other's way. That seems to be a trend with Willian this season so far. Not sure what's happening. It's not being on the same page as the rest of his teammates. Is it he's trying too hard, or you know, just not happening? You think after a season together, you'd know how the rest of your team plays. Yeah, Hazard isn't nearly back to 100%. Conte's doing the right thing in protecting him. Yeah, I think that's the generally accepted narrative in that sense. Certainly, a couple years ago, when Hazard kept battling his injuries, we saw that a not fully fit Hazard is a fair bit lower or worse player than a fully fit Hazard. So, getting him fully fit for the rest of the season is certainly more important than rushing him back. There should be no reason to rush him back with the rest of the squad fit. But it's certainly disappointing to not if you make that choice, you take that risk to not start with your best player, and then you fail to score a single goal. You know, it's a risk you take, and now you've faced the consequences, I suppose. But yeah, we would have to trust that they know how to best handle Hazard's injury and all that. And there's plenty of games in which he can play, and he has a week to recover basically now before Stoke. I would not expect him to play against Nottingham Forest. So hopefully, starting next weekend, he can be fully back and get us back on the winning track, I suppose. It kind of feels like a loss, which it's probably because it's Arsenal, but in the end, it's a draw. It's a draw, still better than a loss. Is Hazard getting fatter? Asks Kelvin. No, he's getting skinnier now. He's back. He put on a couple. The shirt has been fitting a bit tighter since he's come back than last season, but it's excusable. He's don't fat shame him. No, it's just husky. He needs to get back into match shape. He missed 3 months with an ankle injury or whatever it was, a broken ankle. So he can't, by definition, you can't train as hard as the rest of the squad. So we all know Hazard loves his hamburgers. Come on. There's no shame. Everybody loves a good hamburger. He'll get back in shape. And it's not like, so far anyway, in his limited appearances for us, it's not like he's looked slow or out of shape, really. But I guess the question is, can he do it for 90 minutes or 70 or 80 minutes? But maybe hopefully starting next weekend, we'll get back on that. Morata is going to get better, don't you think? Yes, and Morata has been improving, had been improving. Today he looked more like in his first couple of games when he just kept falling every time somebody came near him, which he might. Those are plays or calls that he might be used to getting in Spain. They certainly won't be calling those in England for him. So yeah, I was sorry, I got distracted there for a minute. Long story short, yes, I think we can expect Morata to continue improving. I didn't even play the full game today. Yeah, well, most of it. He came off when, presumably Morata would have finished out the game and possibly played with Batshuayi. He started warming up, so maybe we were looking to go 2 up top for the end, for last few minutes, but then Luiz's red card kind of destroyed that plan, and we brought on Christensen to see out the game at 0-0. But yeah, Morata today certainly looked a little soft. Looked every bit the stereotypical, soft player from Spain who's looking for the foul with every single contact. But yeah, it's some players need that adjustment period. Some players don't. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about at this point. He's already scored 3 goals, got a couple assists. Didn't score today. I mean, it's gonna happen. Can't really expect him to score every game. He did come close one time from was another Azpilicueta cross. I think he was actually whistled offside, so the shot didn't count. But yeah, I hope he's looking for the foul rather than not physical enough. I think that's the distinction that at least gives me hope. He's not. He's as he's shown in the last couple of games, for example, against Leicester City. He's physical enough when he wants to be. I think today, for whatever reason, he just decided to start looking for a foul. In his defense, Arsenal got plenty of calls from Mr. Oliver in pretty soft fouls. Not the David Luiz one. That was not a soft foul. But Alexis got a couple calls where he just kind of collapsed to the ground. So I don't really. I can see why perhaps Morata thought he could get a couple calls like that. I think he finally got one. Although who was it? Like Mustafi was called for 4 fouls and never once got a yellow out of it. So at some point the persistent fouling is a rule that needs to be applied. And we know that Oliver can apply that rule because he applied it on Hazard. But today, not today. He did get Morata a yellow card, but I think that was for a little too much complaining and too much talking from our striker. So that was I guess supposedly deserved. I don't have issues with that yellow. I just have issues with inconsistency, which should be your number one goal as a referee, I believe, and that's something that the referee today was not very good at. Is it biased or refs don't give us a fair shake? I couldn't possibly tell you. I'd like to believe it's a case-by-case thing and not like a systemic thing. Possibly when Mourinho was here, he had waged his whole campaign against referees, and that was that eventually backfired. But I don't know. It's interesting. You would think playing at Stamford Bridge, the home field advantage should be that you get the calls from the referee over your opposition. That didn't really seem to happen today. So, maybe this concept of a home field advantage is dying out a little bit. Maybe Fabregas can convince Alexis to come to Chelsea. Yeah, I think the Alexis ship might have sailed, although I guess we'll see what shakes out in January. with his contract expiring and being able to sign with other teams. He seems set for Manchester City, I think, Alexis, and you know, in a way, he's gonna age himself out as far as a potential Chelsea target is concerned. So we might have to make do without Alexis. Conte should stop using Morata as if he's Costa or Drogba. Maybe some tactical change in the future, says Kelvin. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I think Morata is pretty well suited to the single striker role in the Conte system, be that a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. He's not like Batshuayi, who seems to need that a second striker to be truly effective. I think it's just Morata had a bad game today, a not so good game, like most of the Chelsea players. Unfortunately, it just hurts that they all picked this day again against Arsenal. I don't know if it's starting to be a mental hang-up here against Arsenal. Having lost the FA Cup final, then lost on penalties in the Community Shield. Now just 0-0. We did beat him in the friendly, for whatever that's worth. Why will Premier League teams sell to City? No problem, but not to us. Yeah, Ariel says we're a bigger threat. I think certainly Arsenal would be more likely to sell to Manchester City. I'm not sure why exactly. You would think Arsenal would be just fine. If they're willing to sell to their other rivals, they're willing to sell to City. They might be willing to sell to us. But on the other hand, we're willing to sell to United, and I'm not so sure we'd be willing to sell to Spurs, for example. So this could be, different relationships between different teams. I'm not sure we should count on either Spurs or Arsenal selling us a player anytime soon. Actually, where is Costa? Are we going to initiate a lawsuit against him? I think Costa's back in Brazil. I don't know. There was many newspapers this week in Spain spent a lot of time tracking Costa's movements, or at least supposed movements. I know there's at least 2 stories on Marca, one including a flight number where Costa was supposed to fly to Madrid like on Monday to begin his new life there. That didn't happen. Then he was supposed to fly to London on like Thursday. That didn't happen. I think we can assume he's just chilling in Brazil and waiting for something to happen. As far as a lawsuit, I don't think we're gonna do anything. I think our lawsuit, our lawyer angle was simply a response to Costa's lawyer nonsense. Saying if you're gonna go this route, we're gonna play ball, but you don't want to do this. I think it's in everybody's best interest to get this sorted, but especially Costa and Atletico's interest if they actually want him, which may not be as much of a foregone conclusion as we'd like to believe. Because Atletico certainly don't seem to be in any sort of hurry to get this done. But the story a couple weeks ago, or initially as soon as after the transfer window closed, was that Atletico want this done before the end of September. So they have 2 weeks to figure this out. Should we try to upgrade on Willian, Pedro in January? I guess we can try, but January transfers are notoriously difficult, and trying to get an upgrade for Willian or Pedro in January would probably involve going to a team that's already like a top team, right? So any any upgrade we might be able to get would be already tied, cup tied for the Champions League, stuff like that. So we do need upgrades or replacements for those two guys sooner rather than later, if for nothing else, because they're both getting up there in age and in contract length. I think Pedro has one more year after this, and Willian has a couple. But yeah, maybe not January, but I think next summer it probably will be one of the priorities to get a big name player to replace at least one of those guys. And if we can swing a deal with Costa and cash for Griezmann, then that's your golden ticket right there. That would be pretty nice, I think. Unfortunately, pretty nice things don't always happen. Rarely happen, if we're being honest, in football. It's the problem. Maybe recall Loftus-Cheek. He's the only player in Crystal Palace right now. Only good player in Crystal Palace right now. Yeah, that's certainly not wrong right there. Crystal Palace. There's bad teams, and then there's Crystal Palace, who once again were shut out this weekend, having now gone 5 games to start the season without scoring a single goal. Loftus-Cheek played alright from what I saw and what I read, but he was withdrawn. He didn't finish the game for a most Loftus-Cheek reason, which was that he got cramps. In fairness, he's been hurt, I guess, or whatever. But you shouldn't be getting cramps at this point of the season if you're top level. So there's that whole question about fitness levels and things like that again, which have been a constant thing with Loftus-Cheek. So, but he is certainly playing well at Crystal Palace. And as Lee said, he is their only good player at the moment. So maybe not recall him, because that would be, he needs this development. He needs to be the focal point, and that's actually fantastic. Don't particularly care if he wins lots of games or loses a lot of games. He just needs to play a lot of important minutes, which he is right now. So as long as that continues, yeah, that's good. Same question about Tammy Abraham. Swansea might lose a lot of games this season, but okay. John Paul says it's because his balls are so massive they deny sufficient blood to his calves. Well, yes. That seems like a bit of an issue that he needs to work on regardless. Zappacosta for Alonso on the left is the question. Yeah, we'll see. This idea that Zappacosta can play left, I forget where exactly it comes from, but I've heard it a couple times now. So maybe something to watch for in the future. Although I think on Wednesday against Nottingham Forest, we'll get to see the one and only and the fantastic Kennedy play left wing back, which could be an interesting experiment. Perhaps he'll reveal himself to be suddenly amazing. Though I wouldn't hold your breath. How many players out there are better than Willian or Pedro? Goes the challenging question for the person who proposed upgrading Willian and Pedro. Well, it's probably a fair amount at this point. No, I don't. I mean, they're obviously top level, top quality players. It's one of those things where the more you see a player, the more likely you are to get upset at certain things they do. It's the whole familiarity breeds contempt paradigm. So I think a lot of teams in the league would love to have Willian or Pedro in their squad, and they're both obviously still full internationals for whatever that's worth. So that's their reputation and their recognition. There's no issues there, but we can definitely upgrade. And as we were just saying, you know, Griezmann is the dream. I think at this point, if we want to truly swing a good deal with Costa and Atletico, we somehow work this in, and that'd be a good signing. You know, if the Alexis thing is gone, I think, so we gotta put our sights on a different target. Yeah, they're good, but they can definitely be improved. And that's kind of, you know, I mean, really, there's a lot of players like that on the team. You know, if certainly we could, Moses and Alonso are good, but they're not the best players at their specific position. You know, few in the squad are. Maybe Conte, Hazard on a good day. How about Belotti in January? Yeah, that keeps coming up as well. I'm not really sure we really need to spend big on a striker at the moment, but we'll see how Morata shakes out. Another one, there's a headline about another Torino player saying that he dreams about Chelsea or whatever, and it turns out it was just some midfielder who said he dreams about playing against Chelsea for Torino because he really likes the stadium. So there you go. Not Belotti, but some other player from Torino said this. Even if we want to upgrade the squad, we should sign English players as per FA regulations. Or just for Champions League, we can't sign anyone. Yeah, so the homegrown quota, which is not really a quota, but at the moment we still only have 4 homegrown players in the squad. And so that's 3 free spots in the squad that we're just kind of letting go. You know, the rule is you can't have more than 17 non-homegrown players, and then you have to fill out the rest of the squad with homegrown players or leave the spots open. You can have as many under 21s as you want. So that's where we stand. Our 4 homegrown players are Cahill, Fabregas, Drinkwater, and Moses. And I think we definitely saw us try to sign more homegrown players in the summer. That's why we ended up spending, you know, untold amounts on Drinkwater. We almost signed Oxlade-Chamberlain, and probably going to try to sign Barkley again in January. So yeah, I think we're going to try to acquire more homegrown players. That said, players now who are still under 21 will be turning 20. Yeah, so players like Christensen and Musonda will count as homegrown players once they turn 22. So that's you know, two more coming in right there, and same is the case for most of our youngsters who all qualify for this. What do we want to call it? Designation label. Do you think Bakayoko should have started? Yes, for the manyth time. Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're going to be talking about that for a bit longer, just because that seems to be the obvious mistake that Conte made in, you know, just picking the wrong lineup, as evidenced by our inability to score a goal. When we kept a clean sheet, it was a little touch and go for about 30 minutes there in the first half. So some of the decisions is justified, I suppose. You know, it's tough to be really mad at the Cahill decision, for example, because we did keep a clean sheet, but I think our build-up on that side suffered quite a bit with Cahill in there. He only really made that one. Only one time was I really, you know, shaking my fist at him. Proverbially, possibly really, as much as you just want to shake your fist at a television screen, which just makes you look really stupid. But as towards the end of the first half, there's one Cahill play where you're just like, oh, come on, man, don't do this. Just keep it, if you're not gonna play around with the ball, just keep it simple. Micah says, "It's now over. What we hope for is next games to win. Both the players correct the mistakes." That's right. This is very Conte-esque way to look at things there, Micah. It's now the key is to learn and improve, work hard, stay committed, all those good things. Clearly we need to follow this up with a win. Both in general, because we're playing Nottingham Forest next, so advancing the League Cup is something that's beneficial to give us more minutes. Although I guess the schedule is congested enough that if we drop the League Cup from it, we probably won't cry too much. But losing at home to Nottingham Forest is not the way to get out of the League Cup, so we need to win that. And then next weekend it's away to Stoke City. And that's not necessarily easy, but... is it away? It might be home, sorry. I guess I didn't look it up. But it's, get back on the winning track here. Certainly, September, last September for Conte was not exactly great. I think we actually went the whole month without winning a game. And that was there were famous back-to-back defeats to Liverpool and Arsenal, which changed the season around. So we're kind of ahead of that at the moment. But City once again going strong. United winning already at half. So they're likely to be neck to neck for a while. They're at the top, and we can't really count on City once again imploding like they did last season. Everybody forgets, or it's easy to forget, that City started the season with like 10 straight wins last season, and then just completely fell off when, in the meantime, Chelsea went on a 13-game winning run. I'm not so sure either of those are repeatable, so, it's the consistency of winning games over a 38-game season is what gets you to be champion. So it's in that sense, it hurts to drop these 2 points, much like it hurt to drop 3 points on opening day. So away games is when you are possibly okay with dropping points. Having already dropped 5 points at home is not exactly great, but there will be better days. I think there will be better days. Looking forward to the Forest games. Rinse off the stench of an Arsenal home draw. Does stink, doesn't it? I think perhaps more so than any other 0-0 we could have had. So this one kind of, if you're playing like somebody like Burnley or whatever, you're just gonna be angry. But it's Arsenal, and just a special stinkiness to this whole thing. So yeah, next up, Nottingham Forest Wednesday night. We can probably expect a decent amount of rotation once again. Give a rest to the likes of Willian and Pedro and Morata and Fabregas and Conte. Although I guess Conte might have to play since Drinkwater is injured and out for the rest of the month, which is rather unfortunate. So, on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up and get ready to watch the second half of this United-Everton game. Maybe Everton can come back and nick some points off of United, much like Swansea. Swansea did good work at Wembley yesterday to hold Spurs to a 0-0 draw. So that was good work from Tammy, even though he didn't score, and from Paul Clement and Claude Makelele. So Spurs are stuck on 8 points. They're currently in 5th place. Chelsea remain 3rd with 10 points. I think Everton can only get up to 12th, barely. Arsenal are in 12th place actually right now on 7 points. That's kind of funny. City running away with the league right now on 13 points and a plus 14 goal difference, which is pretty ridiculous. United trying to keep pace today. We'll see how they do. So I mean, it's you know, solid start certainly to the season. Better than last season. But again, we can't really count on a 13-game winning streak to get us back at the top of the race and well ahead of everybody else. So you know, no more drop points, please, at home, because that's kind of silly. Anyway, next up will be Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. So we'll talk to you after that at some point. Maybe not right after. We'll see how the day shakes out. Since for us here on the west coast of the United States, that's in the middle of the workday and your lunch. Ogbu says we're very lucky to draw. They would have beaten us today. Poor performance. Well, I don't know about very lucky. We had our chances, and if Pedro scores that goal, I think the game turns out much differently. Certainly a disappointing day from Chelsea. Lucky in some respects, just poor in other respects. Didn't make our dominance count either in the first 15 minutes or in the second half. A couple of bad decisions from Conte and the starting lineup, but even then, you know, just one would assume, even if we just start Fabregas and Cahill, you know, it's not a reason to not play well. So it's easy to blame Conte's decisions. And in the end, you know, the buck stops with him, as they say. But just this disappointing overall. It is what it is. And now we move on. And move on to Nottingham Forest on Wednesday. So if you watched any of this, or the whole thing, I don't know why you'd watch the whole thing. But if you watched at least parts of it, thanks for watching. And we'll talk to you after Wednesday's game, which hopefully will not be a 0-0 draw, because that would be super annoying.